When she does that, yep, you're going to see this prompt come up on your screen that the meeting is being recorded. If folks could just hit got it, and we'll move into our meeting for today. Every month, we will use a similar opportunity to listen. We'll start off with a question and have the opportunity to go into breakout rooms and discuss that discussion question. When you go into your breakout rooms, really encourage folks to share your introduction so that you can start to meet other people who have joined us this evening. We'll have an opportunity to learn. Tonight, we're going to talk about our public education voter slate and what are some things that you can be looking at during this upcoming election season as a public education voter and advocate. And then that lead portion will have an opportunity to share how can you take what you've learned today, either from other participants or through the presentation, and take action and lead in this issue. Before we hop in, I just want to say thanks to my team. They're the Great Education Colorado team who are all on this call today. We have Nicole Shea, our Director of Operations. She's our Zoom wizard extraordinaire. And so if you need anything, feel free to reach out to her in the chat or to Zach Tardif, who is our Director of Development, and he is also joining us this evening to help support with Zoom. Ben Robinson is our fantastic comms coordinator, and he's here to also just be a participant and hear and listen in. Our Director of Equity Matters, Lee Steed, is also on the call. Lots of folks might know her, and she's always out in community doing great work. We're really excited to have a new member of our team, Valeria Contreras, who is our new Director of Organizing and Community Partnerships. And so she has joined the team since our last meeting. Our Executive Director, Lisa Weil, is on the call, and I'm excited to have her help me with the Q&A for any questions that folks have that I might not be able to answer. Our Director of Communications, Annalise Harris, is here as well. If you see us on Facebook, if you see any of our great visuals, our great stats, our great videos, all of our communications is really a big nod to her. And then I just want to make sure I haven't missed any other members of our team. And then myself, our Director of External Affairs. So I'm excited to jump in. Just quick reminder, as we work together and build this space every month, just want to have an opportunity to talk about some commitments that are here to help us really focus on collaboration and community building and the ability to learn together. First, would love for folks to have an opportunity to participate as you want to. And so if you make space for others, move up, move back. If you've had an opportunity to share, thanks for stepping up and leading. And we want to provide folks that opportunity to do the same. We also know that there is so much expertise that we can bring to the table. Every single person on this call has something to contribute and share. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. So just excited to be able to learn from all of you, and hopefully we can share some of that learning back in return. Presuming positive intent, but acknowledging our impact. What we really hope is that you have the opportunity to engage in really critical dialogue, but having that opportunity, everyone here has taken time out of your day, out of your normal lives to be here, and just that positive opportunity to lead is really what's drawing us all here today. So definitely want to encourage folks to ask questions of other participants and just be thinking about our relationships together when we are here. Please use the chat and to communicate with others, to be able to ask us questions, or make comments. And so use the Zoom tools at your disposal. And then also want to always start off with a land acknowledgement. If you're familiar, a land acknowledgement is an opportunity where we can collectively acknowledge as a group that where we're zooming in from is, for myself in Denver, is traditionally territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. And so across the state of Colorado, we have 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the land that we are all living on, working in, and that where our communities are. And so I want to just acknowledge that the history of genocide and removal of Indigenous peoples, but also the hope that part of us coming together, building community and supporting our public schools can contribute to just dismantling ongoing legacies of oppression, honoring the past, current, and future contributions of Indigenous communities across our state. So now it's my time to step back and move back, just like one of our community commitments. And the theme of tonight's Advocates Network meeting is being a public education voter. And so as we kick off our meeting tonight, want to invite folks to join a breakout room. Our Director of Ops, Nicole Shea, is going to set that up for us and get us going in just a minute or so. But you'll have some time in your breakout room to discuss this question. What does it mean to you to be a public education voter? So I'll make sure that I broadcast this question into your rooms as soon as we get started. And again, really want to encourage folks to share just a brief introduction of yourself so that folks know who you're talking to in each room. So your name, your preferred pronouns, and where you're zooming in from, and if relevant, an organization or a school that you might be representing.
We will have 5 to 6 people in each room and just under 10 minutes for breakouts. So just keep that in mind when you are sharing out. And I'm going to open the rooms.
Thank you, Nicole Shea.
Hi there, Sindra. I don't know if you can hear me, but we are in breakout rooms. I tried to put you in one, but it says you have not joined yet. Let me know if something is not popping up on your screen for you to join a room, and I'll try to redo that for you. Welcome, Mary. I am going to put you in a breakout room. We just moved into them. So you should be catching them right at the beginning.
What's it
Room
about?
4 could use someone.
What's it
Yep.
about?
What does being a public education voter mean to you?
Got it. Thanks. Sorry,
Oh, no, you're so good.
Yeah, we had Hi there. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, we just started in breakout rooms and we'll be there for about 8 minutes. So I'm going to put you in room 2, just so you know. Did you do that, Cody?
I did not. See folks coming back. We're going to start that recording again. Thanks so much, everybody, for hopping into those breakout rooms and popping back. Would love 2 ways for folks to share out from your breakout rooms, because we definitely want to hear across groups what some of the things that you folks were discussing. And so if you want to take, there's 2 ways that you can do that, either in the chat, if you want to type out a response to this question that either you shared or that someone in your group shared that you thought really resonated with you. Would love to see folks putting that into the chat. If you'd like to share and come off mute, also feel free to do that. But what was one comment or response that you heard to this question or shared that you would love to share with the whole group? Go for it, Sean.
Thank you, Cody. So what I liked is our group had varying backgrounds from educators to citizens to legislators. So legislators, educators, and citizens, and some of our comments were unified in what we're looking for and in support of public education, and others were new ideas. So I just loved it to hear other people's aspects and where they're coming from.
Great.
you.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks, Jerry, also for adding in the chat, being aware of ballot initiatives that impact school funding. Maggie shared one thing that came up in our group was an emphasis on knowing about the issues in candidates, right? That's definitely big for me. Group 2 had some ideas about educating others, looking at every ballot initiative and how it impacts our community. Anybody else want to share off mute?
We had a few people that were from new to Colorado, and so they were just here to learn and wanting to know more about the laws, and so I think that was to me that was pretty important, that people are showing up so they can be those educated voters. So that's what that meant to them.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. Martha put in the chat, looking beyond the language of any ballot initiative to evaluate its impact on public schools. Great. Great. Important to keep in mind repealing Tabor, the whole thing, and that it will be a long struggle, right? That the kind of the rules in the game in which that we have to play, that's defined by Tabor. Awesome, awesome. So I am going to right now just go a little bit over our agenda. Tonight, we're going to share two kind of big key ideas with the group. One, we have thought of as over the last couple of years and through this year, just continuing to ask ourselves at Great Ed this question: what does it mean to be a public education voter? And our director of communications, Annalise, is going to share a really great video and just some of our perspectives on what it means to be a public education voter. So excited for that. And then we are going to talk about what is Great Education Colorado's 2021 Public Education Voter Slate. What are some things that we hope advocates pay attention to on the upcoming ballot that have to do with our K-12 public schools? So I'm going to kick it over to Annalise. We'll check and see if Annalise is here. Huh.
She's here. She's on mute.
That is what
Or her picture is.
So as Annalise is working on technology, Zoom world, we're still living in it.
Cody.
Oh, I think we can hear you now, Annalise.
My name is Annalise Harris, and I'm the
It is kind of hard to hear you, Annalise.
Ooh. Oh, you can't hear me?
Right. While Annalise is reconnecting, I'll share just a little bit about public education voter. Might sound familiar to folks who've been with Great Ed for at least the last couple of years. Public education voter started in 2019 during Prop CC and the fight for more funding on that ballot initiative. And oh, Annalise, I think I can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yay. I just started talking about the history of public education voter. Would love for you to introduce yourself and kick it off.
Well, I'm sorry, my group could hear me before, so I don't know what happened within 30 seconds. Yes, my name's Annalise, and I'm excited to see so many people on, hearing that there's people who are new to Colorado. It's great. And also seeing familiar faces, of course, and a lot of folks in solidarity with supporting what a public education voter is and sharing their ideas. I heard a little bit that Cody started, that public education voter started in 2019 during Prop CC. You already shared that.
Yep.
Folks, because COVID hit, but we continued in the fight to pass which
Annalise, I think we lost you again.
Huge statewide effort in 2020, which did successfully repeal Gallagher. And you know, we've done a lot of work with Great Ed. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, is it cutting out?
It is cutting out. And so I'm
Oh,
so
man,
sorry. But
that's
one thing I want folks to be able to
unfortunate.
see is the beautiful video that you created
Send it.
to talk
Can you
more
hear me?
about a public education voter. And so I'm going to play
Hello?
Annalise's video, and then we'll reconnect with
This is
Annalise in just a second.
strange.
Cody, can you turn up the volume, please?
Sorry, folks, for all the technical difficulties, but what I will make sure on our Advocates Network page, we have this video ready on, and so you'll be able to see that, and I'll share that link. So hopefully you're able to catch that at the end of this meeting. And also just appreciate the grace as we continue to navigate a Zoom world and continuing to learn more about how to hold this space here together. So I'm going to hop into the next part of our agenda, which is our public education voter slate. And so in the upcoming election season, there are a few different things that we hope folks are able to think about, and just want to encourage folks to be engaged on kind of three key things that are happening in our communities. There are different members of my team are going to talk about each of these components. We talked at our last advocates meeting about declining to sign a petition for an initiative that's currently gathering signatures. That'll be the first thing that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to pass it over to Ben.
Great, thanks, Cody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Initiative 31 in the context of public education voter. So to give you a little bit of a background about Initiative 31, signatures are being collected right now. They're due in late October. And what this initiative would do is reduce the amount in the general fund available for public schools and other investments by 350 plus million per year. To give you a little context for that, Colorado is already 572 million, so over $500 million behind in keeping up with inflation since the Great Recession. So that's what's called the budget stabilization factor, or the BS factor, right? That's the debt owed to our students, teachers, and schools that we really need to repay in order to even get even. So Colorado's economic rebound means that we do have the resources under our current tax rate to repay the debt we owe our students, and Initiative 31 poses a threat to that mission. And another thing here is that the tax cuts that Initiative 31 would afford Coloradans would disproportionately benefit wealthy Coloradans. And so for middle and lower income earners, the benefits would be really, really scant in terms of what they receive. And then we'd still have this problem with the budget stabilization factor and with students not having the resources that they need to succeed. And Cody, you can mosey on through there. So we've developed an online action for Initiative 31 to reach out to people, let them know what's going on, so that we can build a movement of resistance to the threat that this poses. And the idea here is that that resistance carries through this election and on to future elections, and gives us a chance to make a big difference in the lives of our students and teachers, with perhaps one or a couple positive initiatives. So far, this initiative has been pretty successful, or our resistance has. So we launched this online action in August at our first Advocates Network meeting. We've had around 1,400 views in the last month, which is pretty good. 100 signups and over 200 shares on Facebook. So we do know the message is getting out there. But we have to do now is really buckle down and make sure that we're getting it out there more, and to people who really need to see it but haven't had the chance to yet. And so Cody is going to put the link to this action in the chat. It is also on our Great Education Advocates Network page. So if you would please share or share that link with your friends, family, coworkers, and others, that would help a lot in making sure that we get this to the right people.
Great. Thanks, Ben. The next on your ballot this year, what Ben just talked about again, is in petition gathering. So you won't see it on your ballot, but petition gatherers need to gather enough signatures by just a few days before the election. On your ballot this fall, you're going to see a proposition called Prop 120. If you were thinking about or hearing about this over the summer, it was Initiative 27, which is a property tax reduction that would lower, as written, seek to lower both the property assessment rates for residential property and non-residential property, which the money that is gathered through local property taxes is one of the main sources that goes to our local public schools. What this will actually do is reduce the assessment rate on multifamily homes and lodging due to some fixes that were made to our assessment rates in the 2021 legislative session. So any reduction, though, to local property taxes or the local share of our investment in public schools continues to put pressure on the state budget, which backfills any money that districts might need that isn't made up in their local property taxes. And so these cuts will disproportionately impact communities that have higher levels of multifamily homes. So think about apartment buildings, condos, or communities that have high concentration of lodging, think like hotels or Airbnbs. And so this will have a disproportionate impact on metros and urban centers, and also on resort communities that tend to have higher concentrations of these types of property. And so we're definitely encouraging folks to vote no on Prop 120, to say that enough is enough in taking away money from our local public schools. And so that is something you'll see on your ballot, and encourage folks to vote no on Prop 120. And then our last and definitely a very important thing that you'll see virtually across all ballots in the state are local school board elections. And I'm going to ask my colleague Lee to share a little bit about school board elections.
Thanks, Cody. It is so important for us to show up when we're talking about voting for who we want to see on the school board. So one of the things, just personally, I just want to just share a little bit of a story to you guys about how important it is to be, to make sure that we have the right people on the school board, because those folks, they shape our child's education. They are also, their voice is also important to what gets passed. And also their voice is important to how what our children learn. We also want to make sure that their school board members are relatable to parents, that they understand the community that they're involved in, and they're courageous thinkers. So these are some of the things that I just want to make sure that when we are voting for those folks, that we are in tune to who they are and where they come from, and are they connected in our community? Also, if we look at the slide here, that almost all of Colorado's 178 school districts are holding school board elections on November the 2nd. So it is so important that we get out there to vote. The school board members are volunteers, they're elected officials with a broad range of decision-making authority in our schools. School board members also play an active role in advocating for state funding and decide how school funding is spent in your district. And it's important not only to vote, but get out and support candidates who share your views. Thank you.
All right, so before we open it up for Q&A, want to share some opportunities on how you can take action on each of these 3 public education voter components of our public education voter slate. I will share, again, our Advocates Network page has a lot of these resources. So once I'm done talking, I'll type it into the chat. But please complete and share our online action to get out the word about Initiative 31 so that we can have as many people as possible decline to sign that initiative, and hopefully we can try to keep that off the ballot. We have a social media toolkit with images and sample social media posts that you can use to share that link in your networks. And we also encourage folks to sign up for our mailing list if you haven't signed up for our mailing list, so that you can stay updated on this and other threats that are coming to public education funding. We know that there are 2 state sales taxes that have been approved by the title board, reductions in sales taxes, that there are other sales taxes reduction or other types of tax reductions that might end up on the 2022 ballot. So we want to keep you informed about everything that's going on in our communities. We encourage folks to vote no on Prop 120 to not lower property taxes, and to check just to make sure that you're registered to vote and that you have your plan to vote. Tell others to vote no and that enough is enough, and no more cutting funding for our schools. And we are happy to come in and talk with your organization, your group, or anyone that you would like us to connect with about deeper information about any of these topics. And just like Lee said, these school board elections are so important to be involved in. In Colorado, we have such a high voter turnout for our elections for state representatives, for Congress. We had a record voter turnout in the last general election, but at school board elections tend to be much lower participation. And so please get out, vote, and support candidates who share your views on what our public schools need to be doing for our students and educators. I'll stop here. Would love to open up the rest of tonight for Q&A, and I'm going to get rid of my slides so I can see your beautiful faces. And we'll be watching the chat as well as if folks want to come off of mute and ask your question, feel free to do so. And just want to remind folks, if you've asked some questions before, make sure that you step back and make some space for other folks to ask questions as well. So feel free to any questions that folks might have.
There's a question in the chat about the 2021 and 2022 ballots.
Yep.
And just to clarify, 120 will be on the 2021 ballot. Initiative 27, we're trying to keep it off the 2022 ballot.
And yep, Initiative 31, we're trying to keep off the 2022 ballot, but
right.
Prop 120 is on this ballot for 21.
Right, and then LEAP is on the ballot in 2021, correct?
Correct. So there are there will be 2 other statewide ballot initiatives on the 2021 ballot. One is a constitutional amendment that has to do with custodial funds, that would change our constitution to say that the legislature has to approve the use of custodial funds instead of the governor. That one's very wonky and has to kind of do with the difference between the strength of the legislature and the strength of the governor. And there will be, definitely encourage folks to check out the Blue Book when the Blue Book comes out to see kind of the different sides of that issue. There is a second proposition that will be on the ballot, which is Prop 119, which is being referred to as LEAP, or the Learning, Enrichment, and Academic Progress Program, I believe is the acronym, or academic program. What that initiative would do is raise taxes for before and after school programs. We at Grade Ed are focusing on the 2022 ballot and thinking about what it is that we need to be prepared for. And so we haven't taken a position on LEAP since it isn't about K-12 public school funding.
I think to be clear on LEAP, another thing that could be said is that it is not, it's more like a voucher program that will go with a student to a program that is not necessarily related to their school. School districts, I think, can apply to be a vendor, if you will, or teachers could. But it'll be, I think, a lot of boys and girls clubs and things of that nature. Am I correct, Lisa?
Yeah, schools would be automatically allowed to take part in it. And I know that there are some organizations here, if people want to provide in the chat sources for information on the LEAP initiative, feel free to do that. As Cody said, we are looking at the 2022 and 2024 ballots, and that's where our focus is. In terms of sort of winning this the war. So if anybody wants to put any information in the chat, please feel free to learn more about LEAP.
Great. Any other questions?
So, hi everyone. My name is Doreen Armelin, and I'm sharing representation with Lacey Mueller. We're with CTA and Adams 14, and I'm listening to everything for the first time. And I'm just curious: are the everything that we're doing, is it inclusive of all of the schools, or are you guys just representative of the Denver public schools, or in general all of the public education? How does it work?
Great question. So I'll answer that maybe in two different ways, and let me know if I've answered your question. Great Ed as an organization is a statewide organization, because in order to increase money for our public schools to have an adequate amount of funding, we would need to raise more revenue, which would, in Colorado, because of our tax law, means that we would have to go to a vote of the people to raise taxes. So we are a statewide organization so that we can bring together communities all across the state, all 170 districts, to try to be a unifying force to help advocate at the state level for increasing funding. Another reason why we're a state level organization is because once the state receives the school funding, the money for school funding, and then goes to distribute that to districts, that happens through a state finance formula that is under control by the state legislature. And so also an opportunity for us to advocate statewide. Lisa, is there anything you would add?
Yeah. Great. So state funding organization is what, yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And the one thing I would add is that we do work very closely with districts. We partner with districts. And as Cody has said, to make sure that we can help local folks understand that connection. You know, that aha moment of what's happening at the state level does have an impact, such a direct impact. And we also are supportive of districts, and we have been supportive in mill levy overrides on occasion, but the problem with those is that they just exacerbate the inequities. It's absolutely critical that is for every student, having more resources in whatever district can do it is critical. But we really do want to focus on the statewide problem and not let those inequities happen between districts who can and cannot pass mill levy overrides and who have property value and don't. So that's why we bring together and through our coalitions and our work, really try to make sure that folks can do the work in their own communities like they need to, but also have easy ways to come together to address the underlying erosion of the foundation of school funding that's happened over the last 10, 20, and 30 years. Great question.
Really great question. We have Paul in the chat asking, yesterday I received a call with a poll concerning increased funding proposals. Was that sponsored by Grade Ed? We don't currently have any polling from Grade Ed out in community. But Paul, if you're interested in sharing more, would love, I'll put my email in the chat if there's anything further that you wanted to share about that. I'm always curious.
Jerry has a question about no left turn. Yes, we are aware of that. No left turn is part of the supposed class CRT, class race. God, I'm getting
critical race
at RCN.
Critical race.
Critical race theory. Thank you. This idea that racism is being taught in our schools, and so no left turn is trying to stop districts from doing anything, any anti-racism programming, any equity programming, the kind of work that's necessary to make all students feel welcome and represented and safe in schools. So we are aware of the no left turn and are working with our coalition partners as well, the Great Schools Thriving Communities Coalition partners, to try to change the narrative and give strength to what I think is the majority. It is a very vocal minority and very well funded and well organized that no left turn is across the nation. And so we're working together to come up with the narrative and the messaging about, this is about honest education. This is not, the critical race theory is a straw man. What they're going after is the efforts to really address the needs of students, to make all students feel welcome and get the resources that they need. I see that Martha has raised her hand. I know she's been looking at this a lot, so I will let Martha continue. And Lee, you may have some thoughts that you'd like to add as well.
I think this is a really good segue into why it's so important for all of us to pay attention to the school board elections this year, because it's an off-year election. We might have great turnouts of open-minded voters in regular on-year elections where there are national and statewide candidates on the issue. But traditionally, these off-year elections, especially when there's a tax issue on the ballot that will lower taxes, it's the people that want to see lower taxes who often want to see a very restrictive government, who often also want to support candidates that are not as concerned with making sure that every child in every school is very welcome. They turn out in droves for these kind of things. So we have to really educate ourselves so that we can find and elect local school board members who really do believe that our kids, all of our kids, should get a great education, and they all should be able to not only be welcome in school, but be able to be taught all of American history instead of one view of history, and should be taught in a healthy way instead of way in schools that are not necessarily following the best guidelines for the pandemic. So I think that's something we all have to be really aware of and fight against this year. That's my two.
Thank you, folks.
Doreen, did you want to go ahead? You have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. So the no left turn works with CCG against their. So I guess I'm confused a little bit. So what is the organization that is trying to keep the the inequities out of the school? Like who, that's the name of the group that I'm trying to figure out. Which group is it that's trying to keep us from being able to get that?
Sorry about the confusion. No Left Turn is trying to stop honest education and stop any kind of anti-racist work in schools. What I referred to as the Great Schools Thriving Communities Coalition, which is Great Education Colorado, the Colorado Association of School Executives, the NAACP, the school boards. It's a broad coalition that is working to make sure that there is a narrative, a different narrative, and that we bolster, as Martha said, it's a very vocal minority and they turn out to vote. And so we are trying to make sure, especially that our districts have the support and the words to stand strong. And again, Lee, if you want to.
I'll say this is a great opportunity to just remind folks of our Advocates Network page, because there's a couple of resources that I think are really helpful for one, the information that we've shared today, but also more resources on making sure that our school board elections can center advocating for equity in our schools. So here is our Advocates Network page. I'm going to put the link in the chat now so that folks can have this pulled up. And this is where we will have all of the resources that we talked about in this meeting, where you can come back to and find future meetings on the second Tuesday of every month. But we've added to this page a School Board 2021 Election Toolkit. And so I'll click and open this toolkit. And in this toolkit is a little bit of background about school board elections and school boards. In the school board election toolkit, we have some questions that we're encouraging folks to ask your local school board candidates so that you know where they stand on issues of education funding and making sure that school boards are advocating for educational equity and inclusion. So making sure all of our students are seen and loved in our schools. We have some sample social media graphics that you can add on social media and maybe tag different candidates that you know are running. But we have a sample email that you can send to different campaigns to see and if they'll respond to you directly about some of the questions that you have about their positions on school funding and on educational equity. And there are a couple of resources that our friends at the Colorado Association of School Boards sent to us that I think are really helpful in answering some of the questions that we were just talking about right now. What is equity in education? That's a great opportunity for folks to learn and dive in. This link here is how are groups like No Left Turn misusing the idea of critical race theory to attack the movement for better educational equity in our schools. And so you can read this one pager here to learn more. And also these can be difficult conversations in our communities. And so they put together a resource guide on what are some tips or ideas if you want to start this conversation with folks in your organizations and your institutions, and what are some ways that you can lead some of those potentially difficult conversations. We'll also have underneath here more resources about different actions or opportunities that we talked about today. But just with so many great questions about school board elections and about the fight for educational equity, wanted to make sure folks knew on our Advocates Network resource page, you can find our school board election toolkit, and then the action to encourage folks to decline to sign Initiative 31 and make sure that we can try to defeat that before it gets to next year's ballot. I'll stop sharing my screen just to see if folks have any final questions, because we have 2 minutes left before we wrap up, and I want to just honor the time that you've already given and make sure that we end on time. So any other last questions, comments, wonderings? Yes, Doreen.
Sorry, so the email that you sent, we'll be able to get all the information that you just showed?
Yep.
Is that what we...
Yep. When you logged into the Zoom link today with that email address, we'll be able to send an email to everybody who's here after today's meeting that will have all of these resources included in that email. And you can always go to our Advocates Network page, which is here in the chat as well.
And can we get a copy of the recording of this meeting?
Yep, that'll be posted on this website as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, great questions. Sean.
First of all, thank you so much for the resources. It's phenomenal to be able to stay in front of all the issues and understand them so we can talk intelligently to others. When you do send the resource page out, if you could do the drill down resource part of the page too, so that we don't have to kind of go searching for it, if you will, that would be helpful to folks, I think.
Great. Thank
So
you for the
thank you.
suggestion.
Really, thank you for all of the great information.
Thank you. It's only helpful since we have such a great and engaged audience. And so otherwise I'd just be talking into a Zoom room, talking to myself. So thank you to folks for joining and making this a meaningful experience. Otherwise, I'm just trying to page through and see if anybody else has their hand raised or if anybody else is off camera getting my attention, but we'll end the recording and we'll just say thank you so much again for coming. Kind of 2 other ways that we hope to see you soon. And I'll just flash my screen up here one more time, is on October 6th is Great Ed's annual luncheon. We're so excited to be able to honor one of our board members who is just an icon in education and just a phenomenal community leader, organizer, advocate, Dr. Joyce Brooks. And so check out our website, greateducation.org, if you'd like to attend our luncheon. Ticket sales are there online, or just shoot our team an email and we'll get you connected. And our next Advocates Network meeting is going to be on Tuesday, October 12th, same time, same Zoom link. So 4:30 on October 12th. And so hope to see you either at both or one of these opportunities. And just thanks again so much for being here. I'll stick on the line in case anybody wants to ask any questions before you hop off. But otherwise, this is the wrap of our second meeting.